Hi guys, welcome to the channel. It's been a while since we haven't done a tutorial, and today we're gonna see how we can do Psytrance grid sounds using Serum as our synth, and it's gonna sound something like this. So basis of the grid sound is for me to create different sounds, maybe like 6 or 7 different sounds, and then somehow harmonize them rhythmically. And these sounds should be talking to each other, but in a way that they speak the same language. By that I mean I think they should be somewhat similar, but at the same time, you need to be able to create that variation, maybe with filter sweeps or the rhythms themselves. I'm gonna go through each of these sounds. So starting from stab grid 12, I call them stabs. People call them different things. So from stab grid to 17, these sounds are what is constituting my grid sound as a whole. So if you just look at this, we have, like 6 different sounds in here. And the first one by itself sounds like. So it's a pretty basic sound. And as I said initially, we made this with Serum. So I'm not going to go through every single sound design process that I had with these sounds, but basically what I did was that I got started with something, and then I try to create variations. So you just do one sound design and then duplicate it and try to create a variation off of that. That was my approach, and it kind of helps you with your workflow as well, so you can get faster. So for this one, it's pretty basic. It's basically 2 saw waves, and it's just a filter sweep. It's just a band pass filter sweep that I put with macro, and here I basically automated it. Also, you can see there's a sub, and all these 3, the sub oscillator, oscillator A and B, they're all going through the filter sweep. They're all going through the filter, and this macro is assigned here, and the way the macro is assigned is not too much. It's just a tiny bit, so if you don't sweep all the way. With the macro, you can do your automations here, and you have more control over your sound. So yeah, that's the first one. Hi guys, I believe one thing I failed to mention in this tutorial was that the use of distortion when we're designing our sound elements in Serum. So I talk a lot about oscillators, macros, and all that stuff, but I think I skipped this portion where we make use of distortion unit in Serum for each sound element we're gonna go through in this tutorial. So the distortion that we use is either diode 1, and you can just check out the knobs over here for the levels and everything. And I think the other distortion unit is this linear fold. So I believe this really matters. And also we make use of the compressor here, and I mostly use multiband to get the effect that we want. So let's say for this specific one, if you're looking at this example here, so hopefully you heard the difference that these 2 distortion unit made, and also the compressor made within the sound design element. And I forgot to mention the effects as I was going through those sound elements in the tutorial, but I'm gonna be inserting this clip right here, and hopefully when you watch it all together, it will make sense to you. The second one is similar, but as you can see, also it has a automation, like a filter automation. But for this one, I use the Filter Freak automation. The reason for that is when I did the sound design, the sound by itself sounds like this. So if I do too much of automations here, you're basically affecting, you know, the entire sound within Serum. So I like where this filter stands right up there, which is 690 hertz, and I like the sound as itself, but I still want to be able to, you know, change the sound, like do filter sweeps. So it's basically putting a filter on top of your filter. So, you know, you have your clear output from this sound, and then I use Filter Freak to automate that. You don't have to use Filter Freak, of course. Any bandpass filter on top of this would do just fine. And initially I said these sounds should be talking to each other. So what I did here is, let's say we sweep down on this first one, and on the second one we can sweep up, and together they're gonna sound like this. So it's almost like they're passing the ball to each other, and so you kind of get that, you know, conversation going in between two sound elements. The third one is slightly different, but again, it's somewhat similar. Just by itself, it sounds something like this. So as you heard over there, it sounds somewhat similar to this 13 sound, but what I did was I added the Echo Boy delay. And again, you don't have to use Echo Boy delay, but you know, any delay you do would be fine. So here I put it in between these first two, because that's kind of how my workflow works. The way I work this out is I create one thing and the other thing, and then I'm like, okay, it needs more of a filler in between. So I guess that's why I, you know, came up with this. The third one sounds something like this. So as you can hear, it wasn't much different than this. But basically what I did, again, as I said at the beginning, is that I copy, let's say I had this thing, right? I basically duplicated this patch, and then, you know, deleted all the notes and automations or whatever. And then I just basically started, you know, putting on different wavetables until I heard something that sounds good. And then I'm like, okay, I like this. As you can see, like the filter hasn't changed much. I just got rid of the sub filter here. Sub oscillator here. And you just, you know, play around with the wavetables. Again, there's not a way that you can just be like, okay, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna sound amazing. It's a lot of experimentation. And three of them together sound like this. Again, we're making them kind of, you know, try to talk to each other, but we're creating this, you know, rhythmical differentiation between all of our sounds. And I'm not gonna go too much into detail of how you do rhythmic differentiations, but definitely look into Euclidean rhythms. I think Dash has a really good video about it, and it was a video I watched a while back too. And basically, it just, you know, breaks down how you can create your rhythms. Yeah, you're gonna have to create some sort of a rhythm. You can't just like throw stuff around and expect it to make sense. So these are pretty, they look all random, but in a way they're controlled. Yeah, it's kind of a controlled randomness. You heard these three together. Now let's go into the fourth one. Before I go to the fourth one, I just want to mention, as I said, my workflow is kind of like I do one thing and then I track back. This is a good example of what I did here. So because when you look at the 16 stab for grid 16, you can see that I backtracked here. But for this fourth one, I was like, hey, I'm happy with these three sounds. I'm just gonna go for the, you know, next portion of this entire bar. So the fourth one by itself sounds like this. And the sound design is something like this. So if you compare, you know, this one with the previous one again, you can see that, you know, see like this oscillator stayed the same, but I changed the wavetable position. I changed the, you know, I changed this second wavetable, and I also changed the filter over here. Again, it's until you find something that sounds good to you. And I brought back the sub, and instead of sine, I made it a saw wave sub. And so yeah, and I just went with this filter. Again, we're doing filter sweeps with this, and I like the way it sounds within this filter. And you know, I created on top of this filter, I just used the filter freak to modulate the sweeps and automate them basically. 4 of them together sound like this. For the 5th one, as we said before, I was like, okay, it's missing something here. So this is the rhythmical part of things. Again, as far as the sound design goes, it sounds like this. You can hear again the difference between this previous one and this new one is not much different. So as you can see, I kept this second oscillator as is now. You know, we changed the filter from minus to plus, and then we also changed the first oscillator, and then you know, we dropped them like an octave down. We kept the sub together the same. So it's just like, you know, little changes that you can make, and when you put them all together, they bring this like really good harmony. Again, there is an inclination sometimes where you want to do something so different, like drastically different, but in the entire mix down, it really, you know, doesn't fit in that well. So when I do grids, especially like this, I try to kind of, you know, try to keep things simple and make sure that they're just like gelling good with one another. So all these 5 together, they sound like this. So it's a pretty good bunch of sounds right here. And the last thing was, in contrary to what I said earlier, I wanted to, at the end of, let's say, each bar, try something different. So the last portion of this sound grid, which is the 6th sound element in this entire group, is like a squelch. So the squelch itself sounds like this. When you have, you know, this variety of different sounds, all you have to do is to create a rhythmical pattern and then copy and paste them. And I'm gonna get to it just right now. As you can see, this whole grid starts in 129, and then I have it until 145. So it's spanning for almost 16 bars in total, with little variations maybe within every four bars. So I'm just gonna go to the first 4 bars of this grid. So, and yeah, and I just want to show you how I made the squelch. It's pretty easy. You know, it's just a simple saw wave, and I do not have any filter within Serum because you don't need it. And since I duplicated my previous synth, I already had this filter freak applied and ready for automation right here on this lane. It might have effect on your, you know, CPU usage, but for the purpose of this tutorial, it's okay, I guess. So yeah, it's just basically a pretty simple squelch sound that spices up the entire grid. Here, I just want to show you, let's say I have this pattern for 2 bars, right? And let's just hear how this sounds by itself. So this is every sound with on the grid for 2 bars. Okay, that's sounding all right. And as I said, so once you get a rhythm going, you can just copy and, so let's say you did something for 2 bars, just copy and paste it to your 4th bar. I mean like 3rd and 4th bar, which is right here. But you can see I have some different variations here. So let's say that this one I used only twice here. This one I used once, but I put more, you know, more like a progressive notes that are being swept up with the filter. And so this one was used 3 times in the first 2 bars, and on the second 2 bars, like 3rd and 4th bar, it's only being used one time. So, you know, once you get them going, you kind of get this feeling, okay, I can change it up like this, change it up like that. I'm gonna play all 4 bars together, and then maybe you can kind of hear those little differences for yourself. And that's pretty much it, guys. Basically, the rest is, for me, I just copied and pasted it. Of course, what you can do is maybe span this around 8 bars, so you can create like a whole cycle within 4 bars instead of 2, and then sample it to the 2nd, 4th bar, and then maybe do some alternations in between sounds. You can do this with more amount of sound elements. You can do, you know, 10 sounds altogether. My approach is to create different grids and for different parts of the sound, parts of the song. So maybe here you can see I have, you know, synth group 1, 2, 3. So I created a couple for the beginning part of the sound. I created one, which is this, for the mid part of the sound, and maybe on the 3rd one you can, you know, mix them all together, do some other alternations. And when you have this, of course, you're gonna have other, you know, elements from your leads or sequences. So I'm just gonna play everything all together, so you can hear how this entire synth grid is mixing in to my song. So yeah, guys, that's about it. Hopefully this is gonna help you or maybe spark some inspiration for your productions. I know I haven't been posting too many tutorials recently. That's because I got really busy at work and doing other side jobs. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful to you. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please let me know in the comment section down below. And I will see you in the next tutorial or next time.